Society has a way of looking at a woman who walks alone and making assumptions. A woman without a circle of friends, without the expected companionship of coffee dates and long phone calls, is often seen as lacking. They whisper about her, wondering what must be wrong. Is she difficult? Is she bitter? Has she driven people away? There is a certain stigma attached to solitude, a weight placed on the shoulders of those who do not fit into the mold of constant social engagement. From an early age, women are taught that friendships define them. We hear it in stories, see it in movies, and live it in our everyday experiences. We are told that strong bonds with others, especially other women, are essential to happiness, that to be without them is unnatural. But what if that isn't the full story? What if a woman without friends is not broken, but simply different? There is a difference between being alone and being lonely, and that difference is often misunderstood. The world is quick to pity a woman who stands by herself, but rarely does it stop to ask if she is actually suffering. Perhaps she has chosen this path. Perhaps she finds peace in the quiet, fulfillment in her own company. The ability to stand alone is not a weakness. It is a strength that few understand. It is easy to assume that friendship is a universal need, but the truth is that human connection comes in many forms. Not every woman desires a circle of confidants. Some find their meaning in other ways, in their work, in their families, in their faith, or even in the simplicity of a quiet life. They are not incomplete. They are not lost. They are simply walking a different road. Yet despite this, the world continues to place expectations on them. A woman without friends is viewed with suspicion. People wonder if she is too guarded, too selfish, too closed off. They search for flaws, for reasons to explain why she stands apart. But what if the reason is simply that she has found contentment in a way others do not understand? What if she has chosen to invest her time and energy elsewhere? There are those who have been hurt, who have reached out for friendship only to be met with betrayal, indifference, or disappointment. Some have given their trust too freely and learned painful lessons in return. And rather than continue to chase after companionship that feels forced or unfulfilling, they choose instead to walk alone. They do not hate people, nor do they resent those who find joy in friendship. They simply recognize that not all relationships are meant to last, and not all connections bring peace. To be a woman without friends is to be constantly questioned, constantly judged, constantly pushed toward an idea of life that may not fit. But what if instead of trying to fit in, she chooses to stand firm in who she is? What if she refuses to accept that her value is measured by the number of people who surround her? There is power in solitude. In a world that moves fast, that demands constant interaction, constant validation, there is something rare and profound about a woman who is unafraid to be alone. She does not seek approval. She does not need to be understood. She is comfortable in the quiet, at ease in her own thoughts. She does not fear the silence. She embraces it, and perhaps that is why society is so unsettled by her. A woman who walks alone, who does not need to belong, who does not shape herself to fit into spaces that do not welcome her. She is a reminder that happiness is not one size fits all. She is a challenge to the idea that fulfillment only comes through the presence of others. She is proof that strength can exist in solitude. So let them wonder, let them assume, let them question, because at the end of the day, the opinions of others do not define her. She defines herself, and that is enough. There's a fine line between being alone and being lonely, yet people often confuse the two. The world looks at a woman who moves through life without a close circle of friends and assumes she must be lonely, aching for companionship, desperate for someone to fill the empty spaces in her days. But that assumption is built on a misunderstanding, one that fails to recognize the strength of a woman who chooses solitude over shallow connections, peace over forced company, and independence over dependency. Not every woman without friends is suffering. Some are simply free from the expectations of others, free from the constant push and pull of relationships that drain more than they give. There is a quiet confidence in a woman who walks alone, a deep understanding of herself that does not require validation from the outside world. She is not waiting for someone to save her from loneliness. She has already saved herself by realizing that she is enough. But the world does not make it easy. Society tells women that friendships define them, that their worth is measured by the people who surround them. It teaches them that to be alone is to be incomplete, as if solitude is a problem that must be fixed. A woman who is independent, who does not seek constant companionship, is often met with concern, people asking if she's okay, if something is wrong, if she needs help finding her way back to the crowd. But what if she isn't lost? What if she is exactly where she is meant to be? There are women who thrive in their own company, who do not fear an empty room or a quiet evening. They do not need to share every moment, every thought, every experience with another person to feel whole. They find peace in their independence, in knowing that their happiness does not depend on the presence of others. They are not burdened by the need to maintain friendships that no longer serve them. They do not apologize for choosing solitude over relationships that feel forced. And yet, for all their strength, the world still tries to label them. It assumes that if a woman is alone, it must not be by choice. It paints independence as isolation, self-sufficiency as sadness. But the truth is, there are many reasons a woman may walk alone. Some have been hurt before, betrayed by those they once trusted. Others have simply outgrown the friendships they once held dear, realizing that not every relationship is meant to last forever. And then there are those who have never felt the need for a close circle, who have always been content on their own, who find fulfillment in things beyond social ties. To be alone is not to be empty. It is not a punishment, nor is it a weakness. A woman who stands on her own does so because she has learned the value of her own presence. She has learned that she does not need a room full of people to feel seen, nor does she need the constant affirmation of friends to know her own worth. She is strong enough to face the world without the comfort of a crowd, brave enough to walk a path that many would fear, but that does not mean the road is always easy. There are moments when solitude feels heavy, when the absence of close companionship is felt more deeply. There are times when the world feels distant, when the quiet is overwhelming, and in those moments, doubt creeps in, the whisper that maybe, just maybe, the world was right. Maybe she does need someone. Maybe she should try harder to fit in. Maybe she should ignore her own instincts for the sake of belonging. But then she remembers who she is. She remembers that her strength is not measured by how many people surround her, but by how firmly she stands on her own. She remembers that her peace is not found in the approval of others, but in the certainty that she is living her truth. And she remembers that loneliness is not cured by filling a room, but by filling a life with meaning, with purpose, with things that matter. So let them misunderstand, let them assume that a woman without friends must be lost, broken, or in need of saving. Let them believe what they want, because at the end of the day, she does not live for their understanding, she lives for herself. And that is enough. From the time we are young, we are taught that friendship is essential. We are told that having close companions is a sign of a good life, that the people we surround ourselves with define who we are. We hear phrases like sisters for life and friends are family you choose, and we believe that friendships are meant to be unshakable, permanent, something we can always count on. But life has a way of teaching us otherwise. Some friendships do last a lifetime, but many do not. People change. Priorities shift. Some friendships fade quietly, while others end in pain, betrayal, or disappointment. And yet, despite how common these experiences are, no one really prepares us for what it feels like to lose friendships, to outgrow them, or to realize that some were never as deep as they seemed. Society tells us that having no friends is a personal failure, but it rarely stops to ask why some people walk away, why some no longer seek the company of others, why some choose solitude over forced connections. Not every woman without friends is alone by chance. Some have spent years trying to fit in, trying to hold on to relationships that were never meant to last, trying to be the kind of friend others wanted while slowly losing themselves in the process. Some have been the ones who gave and gave until they had nothing left, who were always there when someone needed them, but found themselves standing alone when they needed someone in return. And then one day they wake up and realize that friendship, as beautiful as it can be, is not always what it promises to be. There is a moment when a woman realizes that not all friendships are built on love and loyalty. Some are built on convenience, some are built on obligation, some are built on the unspoken rule that as long as she plays her role, she will be accepted. But the moment she stops being what others expect, the moment she needs instead of gives, the moment she chooses herself instead of sacrificing for someone else, that is when the truth is revealed. And that truth is hard to face. It is painful to look around and realize that the people who once stood beside you were only there for as long as it benefited them. It is heartbreaking to reach out and find that the hands you once held so tightly have let go without hesitation. And it is exhausting to keep trying, to keep hoping, to keep pretending that these connections still matter when deep down you know they don't. So some women stop trying. They stop chasing after friendships that no longer serve them. They stop holding on to people who do not hold on to them. They stop pretending that being surrounded by others is more important than being at peace with themselves. And in doing so, they step into a new kind of freedom. But that freedom comes with a cost. The world does not understand a woman who walks alone. It questions her, labels her, assumes she must be bitter, damaged, or incapable of forming real connection. It does not see the years she spent trying. It does not see the friendships she fought to keep. It does not see the pain of realizing that some people were never truly there. It only sees the result. The woman who now chooses solitude over superficial bonds, who no longer clings to relationships that drain her, who has learned that being alone is better than being surrounded by the wrong people. And perhaps the hardest part is that even in this understanding, there is still a longing. Because no matter how strong a woman becomes, no matter how at peace she is with her own company, there will always be moments when she wishes it could have been different. When she wishes that the friendships she once believed in had been real. When she wishes that the people she once trusted had stayed. But wishing does not change reality. The past cannot be rewritten. And so she learns to move forward, not with bitterness, but with wisdom. She learns that losing people is not always a loss. She learns that friendships are not measured by how long they last, but by how true they are. And she learns that sometimes the greatest act of love she can give herself is to walk away from what no longer feels right. Let them wonder why she is alone. Let them question why she does not have a circle of friends to call her own. Let them assume whatever they wish, because the truth is she has not lost anything. She has simply let go. And in letting go, she has finally found herself. There comes a time in every woman's life when she is forced to sit with herself, to look around and see who remains, to ask herself if the people in her life truly bring her peace. And for some, that moment comes with the realization that they are alone, not because they are unworthy, not because they failed, but because life has a way of revealing truths that are difficult to accept. It forces us to see the relationships that were built on shaky ground. The friendships that faded the moment we stopped being convenient. The people who were only there when it was easy. And in that moment the question arises, what now? The world tells us that loneliness is something to be feared. It tells us that if we find ourselves alone, something must be wrong. But what the world doesn't tell us is that solitude is not just an absence, it is also an opportunity. It is in those quiet spaces, in those moments of emptiness, that a woman truly begins to see herself. And though the pain of loneliness can be sharp, though it can cut deep and leave her questioning everything, it also does something else. It forces her to grow. There is something powerful about a woman who has faced herself in the silence. She has walked through the days when there was no one to call, no one to lean on, no one to pull her out of the darkness but herself. She has sat with the weight of disappointment, the sting of betrayal, the ache of knowing that the people she once trusted are gone. And yet, she does not crumble. She does not fade. She does not disappear. She learns. She learns that loneliness is not always an enemy. It is a teacher, a mirror, a refining fire that strips away the noise and leaves behind only truth. It teaches her that she is stronger than she ever knew, that she is capable of standing on her own 2 feet, that she does not need to be surrounded to be whole. It teaches her that the world may misunderstand her, may label her as distant or detached, but that none of those opinions change the fact that she has found something far more valuable than forced companionship. She has found herself. And once a woman has found herself, once she has walked through the pain and come out on the other side, she is never the same. She no longer settles for friendships that feel like obligations. She no longer clings to people out of fear of being alone. She no longer seeks validation in the company of others. Instead, she becomes selective, intentional, careful with who she allows into her life, because she knows now that peace is worth protecting, that not every invitation must be accepted, that not every hand offered in friendship must be held. But that does not mean the journey is without struggle. There are moments when the silence feels overwhelming, when the weight of solitude presses down with a force that is almost unbearable. There are days when she longs for someone to understand, someone to simply be there, and in those moments, doubt creeps in. It whispers that maybe she was wrong to walk away, that maybe she should have held on a little longer, that maybe something is missing after all. But then she remembers. She remembers the feeling of being surrounded by people and still feeling alone. She remembers the exhaustion of pretending, the emptiness of conversations that lack meaning, the way she once shrunk herself to fit into spaces that were never meant for her. She remembers the freedom she found when she let it all go, when she chose herself over the need to belong. And so she stands firm, not because it is easy, but because she has learned that true growth comes from embracing the things most people run from. She has learned that being alone is not the same as being lonely, that solitude is not a prison but a path, that the deepest kind of transformation happens in the moments when no one else is watching. So let them wonder how she does it. Let them question why she is not desperate to fill the empty spaces. Let them assume that she must be unhappy, must be waiting for something, must be searching for what they think she lacks. Let them misunderstand, because she knows something they do not. She knows that the woman who has walked through loneliness and emerged stronger is a woman who can never be shaken. And that is enough. The world looks at a woman without friends and assumes she is missing something. It assumes she longs for connection, that she spends her days wishing for companionship, that she moves through life with a void she cannot fill. But what the world fails to understand is that fulfillment is not found in numbers. It is not measured by how many people surround you or how often your phone rings. True fulfillment comes from within, from knowing who you are and living a life that reflects that truth. A woman without friends is not necessarily a woman without joy. She is not defined by the absence of a social circle, but by the presence of something much deeper, peace. A kind of peace that does not depend on the approval of others, that does not waver when relationships fade, that is not shaken by the whispers of those who do not understand her choices. She has learned that the most important relationship she will ever have is the one she has with herself. There is a difference between seeking connection and seeking distraction. Some fill their lives with people to avoid facing themselves, to escape the quiet that forces them to confront their own thoughts. But a woman who walks alone has no such fear. She does not run from the silence. She embraces it. She does not need to constantly be in the presence of others to feel alive, because she has built a life that is rich with meaning, even in solitude. But this is not what the world teaches. From an early age, women are told that their ability to form friendships is a reflection of their worth, that being well-liked is just as important as being strong or intelligent. They are taught to be agreeable, to accommodate, to prioritize relationships above themselves. And so they do. They mold themselves to fit into groups. They silence their true thoughts to avoid conflict. They give endlessly in the hopes that they will be valued in return. But what happens when a woman stops doing this? What happens when she chooses to stop shrinking, stop conforming, stop trying to fit into spaces that do not align with who she truly is? The answer is simple. She loses people. She discovers that many relationships were built on expectation rather than authenticity, on convenience rather than connection. And when she chooses to live in truth, many walk away. At first, this can feel like loss. It can feel like failure, like proof that maybe she was wrong to stand apart. wrong to choose herself. But in time, she realizes that what she lost was not love, it was illusion. And what she gained was something far more valuable, the ability to live without pretense, to move through life unburdened by the need for constant validation, stand alone and know that she is enough. She has learned that the quality of relationships matters far more than the quantity, that having no friends at all is better than surrounding herself with people who do not truly see her. That peace is found not in being accepted, but in being authentic. She has let go of the idea that fulfillment must come from others and has instead created a life that fulfills her on its own. There are moments, of course, when the world makes her question, when she sees others laughing in groups, when she hears stories of friendships that have lasted a lifetime, when she is reminded of the way society celebrates those who are always surrounded. And in those moments, the doubt creeps in. Maybe she should have tried harder. Maybe she should have held on to people a little longer. Maybe she was too quick to walk away. But then she remembers. She remembers the exhaustion of pretending, the weight of maintaining connections that felt more like obligations. She remembers the freedom she found when she stopped seeking approval, when she let go of the idea that her worth was tied to the presence of others. And she remembers that the life she has built, though unconventional, is hers, and that is enough. So let them question. Let them assume that a woman without friends must be incomplete. Let them wonder how she moves through life without the constant presence of others, because she knows something they do not. She knows that true fulfillment does not come from being surrounded, but from being at peace. And she is at peace. That is enough. The world looks at a woman who walks alone and assumes she must be searching. It believes she must be waiting for something to change, for someone to enter her life and bring meaning to her days. It assumes that she must be longing for what she does not have, that she must be incomplete without companionship, but the world is mistaken, because a woman who walks alone is not a woman who is lost. She is a woman who has been found. She has walked through the fire of loneliness and emerged stronger. She has stood in the silence, faced herself, and learned that solitude is not something to fear, but something to embrace. She has let go of the friendships that drained her, the relationships that no longer fit, the expectations that told her she had to belong to be worthy. And in doing so, she has discovered something greater than friendship, something more powerful than mere companionship. She has discovered herself. But the world does not understand this kind of strength. It does not know what to do with a woman who does not seek validation in the company of others. It does not know how to categorize someone who is content in her own presence. It labels her as distant, cold, unreachable. It tells her she is missing out, that life is meant to be shared, that happiness is found in numbers, and for a moment she might wonder if they are right. Because there are days when the silence feels heavy, days when the laughter of others feels like a reminder of what she no longer has, days when she sees the bonds between people and wonders if she should have held on a little longer, tried a little harder, sacrificed a little more. And in those moments, doubt whispers in her ear, telling her that she has chosen the harder road, that she could have taken an easier path, that maybe she was wrong. But then she remembers. She remembers the exhaustion of pretending, the weight of friendships that felt more like obligations than joys. She remembers the feeling of being surrounded and yet unseen, of giving endlessly and receiving nothing in return. She remembers the moment she finally let go, the moment she chose herself, the moment she realized that being alone is not the same as being lonely. And in that remembering, she finds her peace again. Because she does not need to be surrounded to be fulfilled. She does not need constant company to know her worth. She has built a life that is rich, a life that is meaningful, a life that does not depend on the presence of others to be full. She has found purpose in her solitude, strength in her independence, and joy in knowing that she is enough. And so she no longer waits. She no longer waits for friendships that may never come, for people to understand what they may never grasp, for the world to accept what it refuses to see. She does not explain herself, does not justify her choices, does not apologize for the path she has taken, because she knows that fulfillment is not something that is given, it is something that is created. And she has created it for herself. Let them wonder how she does it. Let them question why she does not long for what they believe she lacks. Let them misunderstand because she is not searching, she is not waiting, she is not incomplete. She is whole, and that is enough.